So with mine, I ended up adding more particles. So my emission rate is this. So 1, 2, 3, 850,000, okay, particles per second. So on average, I have this many particles, right? So if I play a bit more, it's going to go up. So I'll probably hit about 1 M particles somewhere halfway through. Yeah, so getting closer and there. All right, so let's say I have 1.2 million particles at a given frame when this is fully on, right? And one thing you'll notice is the colors are wrong, right? Well, to get n particles to render properly in Arnold, we have to do some tinkering here in the Hypershade. Okay, so I'm going to clear this. So first, I'm going to make an AI standard material, right? AI standard surface. I'm going to grab this, right click on this AI standard surface, assign material to selection. So that means this is now assigned to that. So I can rename this particle AI just so it's easier to understand. And the next thing I want to do is I want to build uh, a particle sampler info. Okay, so I type here particle, oops, there you go, sampler, right? And I want to keep clicking these three until all the settings show up, like so. Okay, because what I'm after is out color. Okay, and I can connect out color to base color of this, and it should give me a correct render. There we go. So now we have colors that match this the viewport a bit better. Okay. Then with a few more tweaks, if necessary, this is going to be ready for caching. There we go. So I cached my particles, and what I ended up doing, I think I didn't show you this specifically, but I ended up using a rate of 1.2, is it right? Yeah, 1.2 million particles per second. So at frame 79, for example, I have 1.8 particles, 1.8 million particles in the shot. Okay. And I cache this, right? By selecting the particle, going to cache, create new cache, and object, option box. Okay. And here you will see it will make a sub folder for you, right? So Willow Wisp is my project name. Cache is a subfolder already created when you create your folder structure. And then cache Willow Wisp 02, that folder is created whenever you cache based on the file name that you have. So I saved this as Willow Wisp 02. So it gave me a subfolder Willow Wisp 02. The name of the cache, in this case, Blue Orb Energy Particle, is based on the name of your particle. So if this would be a different name, that would be automatically used here. You can, of course, change all of this, but it's best to keep the names suggested so you know which is which, and it's easier to trace things later on. All right? File distribution, one file per frame. Pretty much everything else here you just leave as is. You can choose if you want to say time slider, meaning it'll cache everything, or you can specify a range. Okay, in my case, I just wanted 100 frames, So I did that. Okay, I just said time slider, and then you hit create, right? I already have one, so I'm going to hit close. Okay, and whenever you select a particle that already has a cache, it will have this new tab in the attribute editor. This is cache. So whatever name the particle is, in this case, blue orb energy particle shape cache one. Okay, so that's it. And here it just says, okay, where is the cache? It's pointing to it. And then you can enable or disable, meaning just check or uncheck this box. If it's checked, whatever changes you do will not reflect because it's only reading the cache files that's already written on disk. If I disable this, if I uncheck it and I make changes, then I can see the new changes that I made because it's computing every frame again. If you do that and you want to, let's say you made a change, you like the new one better, you can always recache. Okay. And when you recache, it'll ask you, do you want to overwrite the old one or make a new one? If you need the old one, make a new cache. Let's say you're just doing samples and you're not sure which one you're going to use yet, you can always just make a new cache. But if you're pretty sure that the new one is better than the old one, just overwrite it and that's fine. Okay, that's not an issue. In the end, 1.8 million particles on average per frame. At 100 frames, this came out to about 12 gigabytes. Yeah, 12 gigabytes of hard disk space. Yeah, right. So rendering, okay, let's see what this looks like. If I do a test render, there we go. Right, so you know it always looks a bit thicker here, but then remember we were changing the um, particle size. That doesn't show up here. The change doesn't show up in the viewport, but it will show up here in the render view. So keep that in mind. When you keep changing particle sizes, always do a test render. Okay, see how it looks. Ideally, what you want to get is a point where you can't really make out the individual dots. Okay, that they kind of smooth into one big blob, one big energy field, or however you say that. Um, but of course, that means smaller particles and more of them. So at some point, you're gonna just hit uh, a limit where your machine can't make it anymore or whatnot. Um, but you try and find a happy medium where it doesn't look like it's really made out of dots, but that's really grainy. Looks really grainy. For energy, you want to get as smooth as you want. If you're doing something like sand or dirt or a dust cloud, grainy is fine. Grainy is great. But for this, you want it to be as smooth as you can. Okay. Remember though that we are still going to smooth this in post. Okay. We're going to bring this into Nuke and add a bit of smoothing there. So it doesn't have to be perfectly smooth here, but something like this at this distance. Okay. It's a good start. All right. You go to your render settings, right? You give it a name. So let's say blue energy ball, right? And here in frame animation extension, you want to set this to frame.number.extension. Okay. And that gives you access to these settings. So you can set a start frame and an end frame. So this would be frame 1 to 100. Okay. Or depending how you're doing it, you can do frame 1 to 50 first, and then the next 50 later, and so on. Okay. You can pick the camera. You should pick the camera. So this is camera one. Otherwise, it will render from this camera instead, which may or may not be what you want. Typically, you never render from perspective. You always use a camera. So we made one. We're going to use that. Okay. So image size, you have some presets here. HD 540 is half HD. Okay, because HD 720 is 1080 by 720. Okay, full HD 940, I think it is no 1940. What's that? See, yeah, 1080. And then there's another, yeah, so HD 720 is 1280 by 720. HD 1080 is 1920 by 1080. So that's full HD. Okay. If you think you can do it, go for full HD. If not, at the very least, HD 540. So half HD. Okay. Or HD 720. So it's not kind of a middle ground, not that big, not that small. Okay. So aim for HD 720. If not, HD 540 is fine. Okay. So once you have all those settings all set up, you go to rendering. Okay. Then you go to render sequence. All right. We're using render sequence because we're using an educational version of Arnold. If you have a commercial version, you would use batch render. Okay. The difference being batch render is a background process. Okay, so it'll assign resources to render and still let you work on other things. Render sequence is not a background process. So if you click this and it starts rendering, then you can't do anything else until it finishes. You can do stuff outside of Maya, like surf or something like that, but you cannot use Maya while it's rendering. Okay, that's the drawback. Okay, but it still gives you the same quality image. So there's no issue there. Okay, so you'd be render sequence, option box. Make sure you're using the correct camera. You can specify where you want to save it. Usually I make a new folder like this one, say render, right? Select that and then say render sequence. And then you will see it will render this out frame by frame. So you'll see it one by one. Okay. And then after that, you just wait for it to finish. And then we can bring it into Nuke, do some post processes there. And then I'll show you how to make a background. Okay. So this thing isn't floating in the void. You can just have a very simple background, like really just a ground plane and a wall. And I'll show you a trick with AOVs that will come in very handy when you're using effects and you're compositing them in Nuke. Okay, so I'll see you there.